Welcome to Market Meridian, where we break down the wealth strategies that separate the world's most successful investors from the rest. Today, we're diving into a video that exploded on YouTube's finance circuit, Warren Buffett's advice to never skimp on 7 critical areas of life. Why did this clip go viral? Because it shatters the myth of Buffett as a frugal billionaire. Yes, he lives in a modest house. Yes, he still grabs a McDonald's breakfast most mornings. But here's the secret no one talks about: Buffett's frugality is selective. He's cheap on trivial things, but he's generous on the things that matter most. Buffett's core message? Saving money on the right things is smart. Saving money on the wrong things? That's not frugality, that's wasting your life and undermining your future. In this deep dive, we're not just listing these 7 items. We're breaking down what happens when you get it right: positive compounding that transforms your life over time. And what happens when you get it wrong: gradual erosion of your health, time, relationships, and wealth, the very foundations of success. We'll also unpack why these 7 areas are, in Buffett's words, high-leverage investments versus the low-value busywork that holds most people back. By the end, you'll know exactly which expenses to stop cutting and which to double down on. Let's get started. First on Buffett's list, invest in yourself. He calls this the only asset that beats inflation and can't be taxed. And it's the one asset he's spent his entire life building. Buffett once said, "The best investment you can ever make is in yourself." It's not about fancy degrees or luxury courses. It's about the things that make you more valuable: skills, knowledge, communication, adaptability. Take Buffett's own story. In his 20s, he was brilliant at analyzing stocks, but he struggled to speak in public. So he did what most people would call a waste of money: he signed up for a $100 Carnegie public speaking course. That investment? It boosted his personal value by 50% overnight. Suddenly, he could lead meetings, pitch investors, and share his ideas with the world. Today, his annual shareholder letters are legendary, and his speeches draw global audiences. That's the power of investing in yourself. What happens when you do it right? You become a walking money machine. Your skills don't depreciate, they compound. Every book you read, every course you take, every conversation you have to improve adds up. Over 10, 20, 30 years, this compounding turns you into someone who can command higher salaries, build better businesses, and navigate change like AI and market shifts. You never have to worry about being replaced, because you're constantly evolving. What happens when you do it wrong? You stop growing. You think, "I don't have time for courses," or "books are a waste of money." But the reality is, your skill set is your only permanent wealth. When you stop investing in yourself, you start declining. You're stuck in the same job, the same salary, the same limitations. AI and automation will replace the skills you stopped upgrading, and you'll be trapped in a cycle of low income and limited options. Buffett's rule here is simple: if you're not getting 1% better at something valuable every day, you're getting worse. Number 2, quality sleep and footwear. Buffett says, you spend half your life in bed, and the other half in your shoes. It sounds trivial, but it's the foundation of your most valuable asset, your health. Let's start with sleep. A cheap mattress might save you $500 up front, but what's the cost? Chronic back pain, restless nights, shallow sleep, and low energy. Over time, this leads to poor decision-making, slower reaction times, and even chronic health issues. Buffett sleeps 8 hours every night. He says it's non-negotiable. Because when you're well rested, you make better choices at work, you're more present with your family, and you avoid the fatigue that derails careers. Now, footwear. Your feet are your foundation. Cheap shoes cause misalignment, joint pain, and even long-term damage. Buffett wears comfortable, high-quality shoes every day. He's not spending a fortune, but he's spending enough to support his body for decades, What happens when you do it right? You wake up energized, move without pain, and your brain functions at its best. Deep sleep repairs your cognitive function, regulates your hormones, and boosts your immune system. This means fewer sick days, better work performance, and a higher quality of life, all for an investment that's a fraction of your overall wealth. What happens when you do it wrong? You trade short-term savings for long-term suffering. You skip a good mattress, and you end up spending thousands on physical therapy and pain management. You wear cheap shoes, and you develop back problems that limit your activity. Over time, this drains your finances and your quality of life. As Buffett says, your health is the one in front of all your zeros. Lose the one, and the rest means nothing. Third, health and preventive care. This is where Buffett's famous car metaphor comes in. He says, if you only had one car in your life, you'd take perfect care of it. Your body is that one car. It's the only one you get. Most people skimp on preventive care, they skip annual checkups, avoid dental cleanings, and eat poorly to save money. But Buffett does the opposite. He prioritizes regular exams, healthy eating, and staying active. Because he knows that preventive care is a fraction of the cost of emergency treatment. A $50 physical can catch a problem early, saving you $50,000 in surgery bills later. A $10 gym membership can prevent heart disease that costs hundreds of thousands to treat. What happens when you do it right? You extend your wealth compounding cycle. Buffett is in his 90s and still running Berkshire Hathaway. Why? Because he's taken care of his body. Longevity is the single most important variable in wealth building. The longer you live, the more time your money has to grow through compound interest. If you're healthy, you can keep working, investing, and building wealth for decades. You also avoid the financial ruin of medical emergencies. What happens when you do it wrong? Your wealth collapses halfway. You save money on checkups and healthy food, thinking you're being prudent. But a single health crisis can erase a lifetime of savings. Even if you have $1 billion, if you get sick at 50 and spend decades in medical bills, all your wealth goes to hospitals and insurers. Your life's work is wiped out and your family suffers. Buffett's lesson here: health is not an expense. It's an investment. And it's the one investment you can't afford to skip. Fourth, buy durable goods, not cheap fast fashion. Buffett has a famous line, price is what you pay, value is what you get. This applies to every purchase you make. Most people fall into this cheap trap. They buy 3 $20 fast fashion shirts a year instead of one $100 high-quality shirt that lasts 10 years. They think they're saving money, but they're actually wasting. The cheap shirt falls apart after a few washes, so you have to buy another one. And another one. Over 10 years, you spend $600 on shirts that fall apart, versus $100 on one that lasts a decade. That's a 500% return on investment for the quality piece. Buffett lives by this. He wears the same well-tailored suits, the same comfortable shoes, the same classic accessories for years. He's not flashy, but he's always put together. Because quality items don't just last, they hold their value, they look better, and they save you time and money in the long run. What happens when you do it right? You build a life of simplicity and value. You learn to distinguish price from value, which is a skill that translates directly to investing. You stop buying things you don't need, and you start investing in things that matter. Your home becomes a calm, organized space, and your finances stay healthy. You also develop a discerning eye. You start to recognize quality in all areas of life, from stocks to real estate to relationships. What happens when you do it wrong? You get trapped in the poverty cycle. You're constantly buying, replacing, and fixing cheap items. You spend money on things that depreciate immediately, and you never have enough to invest in things that appreciate. Your closet is full of clutter, your wallet is empty, and you're stuck in a loop of making do with low-quality products. As Buffett says, the cheapest thing in the world is the expensive thing that falls apart. Fifth, maintain your relationships. Buffett once said, "Success is about how many people you love who love you back. It's not about your net worth. It's about the people who stand by you when times are tough." Most people skimp on relationships. They skip family dinners to work late, they cancel friend outings to save money, and they don't invest time in nurturing connections. But Buffett does the opposite. He spends quality time with his family, he stays in touch with his closest friends, and he values his community. Because he knows that relationships are the ultimate safety net. When you invest in relationships, you build a psychological safety net. If you lose your job, if you have a health crisis, if you hit a financial rough patch, your friends and family are there to help. They'll give you advice, a place to stay, a loan, or just a listening ear. And in the long run, these relationships are priceless. What happens when you do it right? You have a support system that lasts a lifetime. You're happier, less stressed, and more resilient. Studies show that people with strong relationships live longer, healthier lives, and they're more likely to achieve their goals. In retirement, you're not lonely, you're surrounded by people who love you. And in business, your relationships open doors to opportunities you'd never get alone. What happens when you do it wrong? You become an island. You isolate yourself, and you pay the price. When you're in crisis, no one is there to help. You feel lonely, isolated, and depressed. In retirement, you spend your days alone, missing the connections that make life meaningful. And in business, you miss out on partnerships, mentorships, and growth opportunities. Buffett's message: don't be cheap on love. It's the most valuable currency you have. Pay for professional financial and tax advice. Buffett says, amateur decisions are the most expensive. And he should know, he's spent his career hiring the best minds in finance, law, and tax to help him build Berkshire Hathaway. Most people try to save money by doing their own taxes, managing their investments, or signing legal documents without a professional. But this is a huge mistake. The IRS has complex rules, tax laws change constantly, and investment strategies require expertise. A single mistake, like missing a tax deduction, making a bad investment, or signing a bad contract, can cost you hundreds of thousands, even millions, of dollars. Buffett never cuts corners here. He has a top-tier team of accountants, tax lawyers, and financial advisors. He pays them well, and they save him far more in taxes and fees than they cost. For example, a tax professional can help you maximize deductions, take advantage of tax-advantaged accounts, and structure your investments to minimize liability. That's money well spent. What happens when you do it right? You avoid costly pitfalls. A good professional can save you from legal trouble, tax penalties, and investment losses. They bring decades of experience that you don't have, and they help you make decisions that align with your long-term goals. You free up your time to focus on what you do best, instead of getting bogged down in the details of finance and law. What happens when you do it wrong? You pay intellectual tax. You save $200 on a tax preparer, but you miss $10,000 in deductions. You try to invest on your own, and you lose $50,000 to a bad trade. You sign a contract without a lawyer, and you end up in a lawsuit that costs $100,000. These mistakes are irreversible, and they can set your wealth building back years. Buffett's rule: for the things you don't know, hire an expert. It's the cheapest investment you can make. Seventh, buy back your time. Time is the only resource Buffett can't buy. He's a billionaire, but he can't create more hours in a day. So he spends his money on things that free up his time, hiring help for chores, outsourcing tedious tasks, and focusing on what truly matters. Most people do the opposite. They spend their time doing low-value work, cleaning, cooking, grocery shopping, waiting in lines, instead of paying someone else to do it. They think, I can save money by doing it myself. But they're actually losing money because their time is worth far more than the cost of the service. Let's do the math. If your hourly rate is $100, spending 3 hours cleaning your house costs you $300 in lost income. If you pay someone $50 an hour to clean, you spend $150 and save $150 in lost income. That's a $150 return on investment, just for outsourcing. Buffett lives by this. He hires people to handle his household, his errands, and the trivial tasks. He spends his time reading, thinking, and investing, things that make him money and fulfill him. What happens when you do it right? You free up high-value time. You can focus on growing your business, learning new skills, spending time with family, or pursuing your passions. You stop being a slave to your to-do list, and you start being the master of your time. Over time, this compounding effect turns your time into more money, more happiness, and more success. What happens when you do it wrong? You get trapped in the busy trap. You're constantly busy, but you're not productive. You spend all your time on low-value tasks, and you never have time to think about your goals, your future, or your relationships. You become a poor busy person, working hard but not smart, never getting ahead, and always feeling stressed. Alright, I do wish these may help us in life. Please subscribe my channel if you like my video. See you next time.